the World of Warcraft Class Q&A panel.
How are you guys? I was hoping for a few more people, kind of a light turnout this morning. Must have been late last night. My name is Greg. I'm one of the lead designers of World of Warcraft. I'm a Libra. I like long walks on the beach, drinking gin, and nerfing paladins. I'm kidding. I love all you guys. You got it. Oh, it's awesome. I love Blizzcon. I think I've met every single one of you now, except maybe you. We'll meet after the show. So, I didn't bring a PowerPoint today. We have a little problem, which is that we are shipping very soon, and therefore you guys know just about everything about the game that we know at this point. The kimono is open. I think Metzen would say baby there. I'm not sure I can pull that off, but open kimono, baby. So we are going to make the whole rest of this thing Q&A, but it's going to be really good Q&A because I brought some very smart people with me. I kind of get a little bit of the spotlight for WoW class development, but of course I don't do it alone. We have a really big team. Basically everyone at Blizzard is a designer to some extent, but these guys up here are full-time designers. This is a good chunk of the systems design team. They're responsible for class design, items, trade skills, PvP, combat, just about anything in the game that has to do with numbers. So I think just about anything is open. Let me go through and introduce them real quickly and be nice to them. So we have here, lose my mic. This is Chris Searhut, Owen Landgren, Ian Hazakostas, and Chris Kalicki. And with that, I believe we are ready for questions.
Not necessarily Lord Godfrey, but okay, hunters. Aspect of the cheetah and aspect of the pack. It's been in the game for a long time now. This is somewhat of a credit to you guys. You've given all the other character classes wonderful tools, where a lot of hunters now no longer feel it's necessary to have a gimp to a skill like this. We all feel it's, antediluvian. Remove it from the game, please. That way it would add more dynamic to the hunter class. Aspect of the pack could be used in other situations. Also, this is kind of a weird thing. It irritates a lot of hunters. Cooldowns. Why does the Glyph of Bestial Wrath not bring it to a perfect minute? You can't macro it into nice things. Glyph of Longevity. Make the cooldown extension to 50%. Done. Real simple stuff.
Yep. I'm not sure what the question was there.
Yeah, I know. That wasn't really a question.
The glyph things I could see. The reason why the aspect cheetah and aspect pack aren't usable, or that they have the days, I guess what you're referencing, is just that if they didn't have the days, then you could just kite stuff all day long in PvE. So, and it's also used
you put mobs on leashes. You cannot kite stuff all day long. That is no longer true.
No.
And mobs you can kite, it's irrelevant. You could kill it anyway. Who cares?
I don't know. I think I'd be able to kite stuff and kill stuff solo as long as the boss doesn't hit me. Or as creatures don't hit you. I don't know.
I challenge you this. Remove it from the game and see what happens. I'm good.
I think people would be very sad.
He's good. Off with a bang.
Thanks for taking our questions, guys. We all really appreciate it. I have a basic design question about all the classes. We have 10 classes now, and I'm really wondering how you guys avoid over-homogenization into basically going from 10 classes, unique classes, to 4 classes, 4 roles. And can you just give us a little insight onto how you avoid that slippery slope of design?
I think one of the key details is they each have a different resource system, so that the way they interact with combat is completely different. A rogue's collecting combo points, a hunter has to worry about focus, the rogue's got energy, a mage has got mana, arcane mage has to worry about how much mana he has. They all have different mechanics on how they use their resources, so that even if they do the same thing, they do it differently. And every time you pick up a new class, it feels completely different, even though we are basically doing the same job.
Thanks.
Hello. My question is for Mastery for Shadow Priests. Right now, it's a stat that most Shadow Priests either reforge or avoid if possible for PvE. For PvP, though, there are concerns that it's a bit too bursty by putting all of that stat into one spell that could be cast. So you get one-shot or two-shot people. What do you think of the current state of Mastery for Shadow Priests, and how do you balance between PvE viability and PvP burst?
So Mastery is one of those things that we really want to make you feel like your particular spec is awesome in its own unique way. And so, for example, Shadow Priests have sort of been known for being those incredibly bursty casters. And in PvE, we want to capture that vibe. We want to capture that just sort of explosion of awesome. And so, right now, it's probably not mathematically living up quite to what you expect on some of the other things, but that's one of those things that we're going to look at and say, okay, maybe we can add in other passive traits, but we don't want to jump the gun and just immediately start changing things wildly before people have got a chance to really play with it in the outdoor world and just see what it's like having that full gear set and changing your gameplay up like that.
And on Mastery in particular, like the balance on it, when we thought of the concept for it, we knew it was going to be very, very difficult to get the balance right. And you can be sure that we're going to be tweaking the numbers on it over time to get it right. Unfortunately, getting it perfectly right requires an enormous amount of data from the players. And we'll be looking at that.
Something we've been talking about potentially, like if the Mastery becomes problematic because of all the burst damage, is what we'll do is cut it in half basically, and part of the Mastery will just be like all your dots, and then the other part of the Mastery will be like the Shadow Orbs mechanic. So I definitely think there's like more polish we could do with like Shadow Orbs in general.
Okay, well, I guess I'm meant to be the one to start the Paladin talk. Well, tanks in general, your idea for Cataclysm was to move away from the 969 that every GCD has to be filled, and your way to do that was Grand Crusade. But currently the math is showing that Grand Crusade is one of the lowest DPS and TPS talents below Reckoning. And the problem is the Avenger Shield will only fit in the slot of a Holy Wrath on single target rotations. Is there any plan to somehow change it, maybe have it proc Sacred Duty, so that it becomes a more interesting mechanic that doesn't only fill in one slot that we have to fill every GCD?
I think the mechanic in that case is interesting. I mean, you get a good proc for a big hit, and it's one of your harder hitting spells. I think if the numbers are just off now, I mean, we don't want Grand Crusade to be worse than Reckoning, for example. And that's an easy thing to tweak the numbers on once we see a little more how things stabilize with the Inquisition damage and that sort of thing. It's a valid point.
Thank you very much.
Hi. I kind of have another / paladin. It's kind of a two-step question about paladins and priests. And it actually involves about the holy class of spells. Paladins I consider them to be a magic caster because they operate on the mechanic of mana. Every other caster class has 2 schools of spells they can use. Warlocks have Shadow and Fire. Priests have Holy and Shadow. Paladins, Holy only. And there's really nothing in the game except maybe an alchemy potion that can resist Holy. So why is that? Because they kind of seem to have that steamroller effect. It's like, hey, I'm Holy. You can't resist it. Sorry, I'm Holy. Sorry.
Over time, we've changed a lot of the Retribution Paladin abilities from being holy to being physical for exactly that reason you're talking about, because it tended to be a little too powerful. But the whole concept of a paladin is they're all about holy. You can't really think of any other school you could give them that would make sense. I mean, it's their concept. You want to add something?
Well, I was going to say, what I was thinking, I guess, ideally wise, is the only, I mean, because, yeah, they're holy. The only thing I was thinking about is maybe having, like, a cleansing fire. Because, I don't know, it just seems kind of weird that there are no holy-based enemies, that they, like I said, they can just steamroll through everything. Everything else can say, oh, this is a fire element, like, I have to cast Shadow, or I have to cast something else. They can just, they've got the, one button.
They're a little more complex than one button now. So.
Well, sorry, I mean...
The guys behind you in line are going to get after us for that one.
Well, I don't want to take it up, but... Thank you.
It's just as an additional quick follow-up, it's also worth noting that I think the advantage of Holy over other spell schools isn't quite as large as it used to be in the past. We don't generally make resistance-oriented gear anymore, and so if you're facing a paladin, the difference between someone who deals holy damage and someone who deals fire damage is maybe your Mark of the Wild or Blessing of Kings, will mitigate 10% of the fire damage and not the holy damage. But that's not the reason why you're losing to the paladin if you are.
It seems like some classes have to take PvP talents, or what could be considered PvP talents, in order to reach the 31 point. Was this intentional? If it was, why?
Could you give an example of what you consider a PvP talent?
Shamans. They have I honestly can't recall it off the top of my head, but they have the talent for taking less magic damage.
Sure, but isn't that useful in PvE? I mean, essentially, if you're not tanking, most of the damage that you're taking, whether you're in a 5-player dungeon or a 10, 25-player raid, is going to be magic damage. And so essentially, it's the difference between life and death in some cases. It's the difference between your healer needing to spend more mana or less mana. I think some of what we've done with the talent tree redesigns in general for Cataclysm has been to free up talent points to allow players to take what we see as utility talents. Obviously, if you're given the choice between a pure damage or a throughput talent and something that improves your survivability or is of more situational use, you're always going to take the pure throughput talent, right? It's less damage taken versus you heal for 10% more, less damage taken versus you nuke for 10% more. That's not really a choice. That's kind of a false choice. So what we've done in many cases is to give you many of the passives that you previously would have taken just for speccing into the tree, and now you have the freedom to choose among some of the utility situational talents.
But as a caster, some of those cases you really shouldn't be getting hit anyway. There are the area effects that are constantly going on, but in some cases, there's really no reason for you to be getting hit unless you stand in fire, which is, dumb.
In an ideal world, none of these things would be needed, right? In an ideal world, something like combat res wouldn't be a useful ability because no one should ever die. In reality, people die.
Hey, so first of all, I want to say I was here last year, and I asked you guys when you're going to fix Vanish, and now it's fixed, so thank you.
You're welcome.
So I do have a different question for this year. Wanted to ask about specifically rogue offhand weapons. With the removal of weapon specialization, we can now use any offhand we choose, dagger, sword, axe, whatever. But because of the speed difference between a dagger and any other offhand, dagger is really the only choice for top damage. Is there any plans to make a speed parity between, say, an axe and a dagger or a sword and a dagger so that a rogue can really choose, whatever offhand weapon they want to use?
So that's one of the things that we're looking at pretty closely. Like, it feels sort of odd to see a rogue running around without a dagger to a certain extent, but at the same time, we also want you to have sort of variation and choice in your weapons. Right now, the offhand weapons, it's pretty much, we're the only guys who want fast weapons, so we put the fast daggers out there so that you guys can pick those up. That said, if we're doing like specialized weapon sets, stuff like that, we might consider other fast offhands to play with, or in the future, just changing the rogue mechanics so that you don't necessarily care quite so much about that fast offhand.
Thank you.
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm Krieg from Iron Up on Bleeding Hollow, and I wanted to